Hey guys, it's not too late to start a subscription to one of our trading card boxes for yourself or that special someone. Swing by HeroHabit.com today, pick your favorite teams, and we'll send you a box of cards every month. We do the searching and sorting for you, and we randomly insert autographs, relics, and short print cards too. We have subscription boxes for baseball, football, and basketball available for $15 a month, and mystery boxes for music, TV, comic book, movie, and WWE, which have a guaranteed hit in every box. Oh, and did I mention shipping is free? Visit HeroHabit.com today and sign up using coupon code PODCASTS to save 15% off your first month. That's HeroHabit.com, coupon code PODCASTS to save 15% on your first month of boxes. Hello and welcome to Kinks and Beats Daily. I am your host, Tony Fry. I thank you for joining me again. Before we start talking about today's song, I just want to remind you, I want to hear about your favorites from the Kinks and the Beatles, solo, as a band, your least favorites, your favorite, anything that you have a strong opinion about, I want to hear about it. So give me a call, 925-494-1739, and just talk about a song you feel strongly about. Maybe it was a hit that you think sucks. Maybe it was a great song you think should have been a hit. I want to hear about it. Leave me a voicemail. We will play them on the podcast like we did for Definite Maybe a couple weeks ago. Also, you can email me, kinksandbeats@herohabit.com. If you don't want to make a trip into podcasting, you can just leave me an email and I will read that. And follow us at Hero Habit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Okay, get that out of the way. Today we are talking about the first Dave Davies solo song of the podcast. And the song is called Same Old Blues. Officially released October 12th, 2018, but it was recorded back in 1978. So for this album, decade, not plural, Dave's sons found all these recordings that Dave had recorded from 1971 to 1979. And they mastered them, mixed them, polished them up. Dave did some overdubs, and they made them full, complete songs and then released this. So these are all tracks that we hadn't heard on official releases. They're not Kinks tunes or songs from Dave's solo career. They were just songs that he had written in the 70s. And I will admit, I have not listened to this album prior to recording this episode. There's so much stuff to listen to. It came out last year, and I haven't dug into it yet. Because partially, I wasn't educated on the album and thought that it was going to be songs we already heard. But then when you think about it, Dave doesn't really have any songs on Kinks records in that whole time period. You know, I read one review that said 2. I was like, that can't be true. And then I was like, well, yeah, it is. If you go after Lola, he doesn't really have any input in the band as a songwriter. Obviously, critical member of the band, laying down some of the best guitar work of his entire career in this period, if you ask me. But he doesn't have any real input as a songwriter, which is surprising because he was writing some good songs and not everything Ray touched was gold in this period. But as Dave admitted in an interview, Ray was very conceptual at this time and he was very prolific. And some of Dave's stuff may not have fit, conceptually on the Preservation albums or Soap Opera or Schoolboys in Disgrace. But Low Budget or Misfits were not heavy concept albums. And this particular tune, Same Old Blues, would have fit perfect on one of those albums. I really hear it as a low budget track. And it was recorded in 78, so it was a possible contender for Misfits or Low Budget, I would imagine, had he really pushed for it. But he also says that some of these songs were just simply fragments. So who knows in 1978 what the level of completion was on this tune. But if this is a close approximation of how complete it was, it is a crime that it was not on Low Budget. The guitar work is very moody and groovy. It's a real slow, almost like a funk groove. It's not bluesy because it doesn't really shuffle or anything like the blues. It does not follow a blues progression. So the same old blues is obviously here a state of mind, not a style of music. But the guitar work is very cool and gritty. It almost reminds me of there's a Zappa song on Zoot Allures called Finder Finer, which is a real slow, groovy kind of tune like this. And just to be clear, I am not 75 years old. When I say the word groovy, I don't mean it in a hippie way. I mean it in a song that has a groove. As a musician, we say groovy in a different way than maybe it's said in pop culture. So just put that out there before you all start calling me some weird old hippie. But it's a groovy tune. And now I'm going to say that over and over and over again because I've drawn attention to it. What really struck me, and like I said, the first time I listened to this song was in anticipation of this episode, and I listened to it like 4 times in a row, back to back. It's a little long, and it has kind of like a fake out ending. It clocks in at just over 4 minutes. But the chord changes on the chorus are just gorgeous. And I could listen to it. I mean, there's so much hook. There's a hook in the guitar riff. You know, that's slow. I love those slow guitar riffs that Dave does. But the chords in this chorus are just fantastic chord changes. And I went digging around the internet to see if I could find them. And the one site that has the chords listed has them completely wrong. And I don't really have the time to sit down and chart it out right now, but I think I probably will over the weekend because I would like to play this song. I think it would be a cool acoustic tune. And if I do, I will share that with you if anybody cares. But what I like about this, and remember when we talked about Death of a Clown, I'd mentioned that I'd wish David sung it down an octave because I think his voice is much stronger on the lower octaves, and that he strains to hit some of the high notes in Death of a Clown. This song, Same Old Blues, is the vocal range that I would have loved to heard. That's just sounded very weird to my ears. I would have loved to have heard Dave sing that song in the register he's singing this tune in. His voice sounds great. When he does go high, it's like at the top of his register comfortably, where he's not really straining to hit the notes. It's just a really cool vocal delivery for him that I wish we would have heard more of on the Kinks, and this would have fit beautifully on Low Budget. I hate that this one is a lost track. Dave, if you're listening, and I hope that you are, shoot me an email or give me a call. I want to talk to you more about this tune and just in general. And if you'd like to be a guest on this podcast, by all means, don't let me dissuade you from doing that. So now I've got to dig into other songs on this album because this one track, I'm lucky. I picked it at random. I've explained this previously. I have a playlist that's got all of the songs that we need to cover on here. And I hit shuffle, and whatever comes up, I plug it into the calendar and then delete it from the playlist. And so this one just came up by chance, and I'm glad it did because this is a good first song to dive into this album and Dave's solo career in general, which really didn't start until the 80s. I think his first solo album came out in 1980. I might have the date wrong. But, you know, he had the solo single Death of a Clown and Let Me Till the Sun Shines back in the 60s. But his first solo album wasn't until the 80s. So this whole decade, he's writing material. None of it is going on Kinks records, except for 2 songs. And some of it, I mean, he's in his prime as a guitar player, as a vocalist, and potentially as a songwriter. We just never knew because it never saw the light of day. I'm kind of surprised that this tune, he didn't work it into any of his albums from the 80s, because it is a really cool tune. And I'm pleasantly surprised, because, you know, a lot of times when artists go through and dig up through the archives, a lot of times it's subpar material. There's a reason it's been archived for 30 or 40 years. But this one is not the case. Now, that said, I don't know how much of this is modern. You know, Dave could have gone in and recorded all of the guitar parts last year, for all I know. And that's fine. Still sounds good. And his voice sounds of that era. So I'd imagine that at least most of the vocal work on here is from 1978. But I don't know beyond that what was recorded and what was added later. But it's a cool tune, and I encourage you all to go listen to it. And if you are not into Dave Davies as a solo artist for whatever reason, if you haven't ventured down that path, start with this tune, because I think you're going to like it. It's got the grittiness and the rawness that we like of edgier Kinks music. It's got some of the cool guitar hooks that we like from like George Harrison's catalog. I mean, if you would have told me that this was a lost George Harrison song and replaced Dave's guitar work with some slide guitar work, these chord progressions back it up. I mean, it is kind of the best of both worlds. If you like the Kinks edge with the, you know, Beatles song construction, this is kind of the best of both worlds. He's really pulling in some stuff that we don't hear very often on a Kinks record. And that's why I wish we would have heard this then. All right. So there's not much to say about it. It's a straight ahead arrangement. It doesn't, I mean, it builds, but it still stays relatively focused on the groove and a real stripped back sound. And I'm telling you, listen to this chorus. Full blast, guys. I haven't said this in a few episodes, so it's time for me to repeat it for any new listeners. Put this on headphones or in your car stereo and crank it as loud as you can. Even though it's a slow song, sometimes those slow songs have the most to offer us at full blast. So really crank this one up and listen to it full volume. Okay? So what are we listening to? I haven't pulled up my list for what we're listening to next. So I'm just going to stammer and stall until I get that Google Doc pulled up. Today we listen to Same Old Blues. Next week we are listening to, or next episode, tomorrow, we are listening to what I believe is the first rock and roll song to feature a fade in. And that should be a dead giveaway for every listener on here. All right. I will talk to you again tomorrow. Make sure you follow at Hero Habit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Call me, 925-494-1739. Talk about songs we've already talked about. Talk about songs we haven't covered yet. I want to hear from you. Or email kinksandbeats@herohabit.com. All right. I will talk to you tomorrow. This podcast is presented by the Hero Habit Podcast Network. Swing by HeroHabit.com today to comment on this episode and poke around our growing database of sports and pop culture news, reviews, and collectibles. HeroHabit.com. Collect your heroes.